We're one day away from the new moon.
Did we tell you guys about that, or did you already know?
I found out about it at the Tattoo Expo, the Sydney Tattoo Expo.
Yeah, that was where we got ours.
Really?
Like 6 years ago.
That's... Yeah. You didn't tell me about it, but...
Yeah, Christine and I, we got each other's moons. So
from your birthday?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was born one day away from the full moon.
Of course you were.
If that's not the most, like, obvious thing.
We're recording right
now. Oh, good. This is Your Authentic Life. That's not even what this is called.
This is Your Moon Life.
This is Aiden Garvey and her obsession with the moon.
Yes. Don't mind us. We're just talking about moons.
It's my favorite thing. It's my favorite part of creation. Without a doubt.
Really?
Yeah.
Mine's dogs.
Dogs are pretty good, but like... I don't know, man. The moon, she's gorgeous. She's beautiful.
But
she runs
she
my
cuddle
whole life.
with you at night?
No, but she can control all of the tides of all of the oceans and your internal moods, in my opinion.
Well,
I once convinced an old man of that. Yeah. I had this massage client who rocked up completely randomly, and he was there for like an hour massage, and we were chatting, and I mentioned that I'm a Christian, and he's like, what's one like controversial opinion that you have? And I said, I believe that we're controlled by the moon. And he was like, say more. And I was like, if you think about it, our bodies are what, like 60% water, and the moon has a pull, a gravitational pull over all of the waters of all of the oceans. There's no part of me that thinks that we are not also affected by the phases of the moon.
Yeah.
And the old man extended to a 2-hour massage so that we could keep talking about it. And by the end, he was like, "You're a very smart woman."
Nice. You just like upskilled, upselled.
I unintentionally upsold a man on a massage that he was.
Just so he could listen about the moon.
Yeah, to us talking.
I like that.
It was kind of annoying. I was almost done with the massage, and so I was like, what am I supposed to do?
I'll just go do it all again.
I guess I'll just start over.
Start from the beginning.
I hope that old man is doing well. If you're out there, sir, you're welcome.
On that note, this is Living Your Authentic Life. We'll start the episode properly.
I'm Aiden.
And I'm Emma.
And we thought today that we would do a bit more of a deep dive on meditation.
Yes, seeing as I bring it up so freaking much.
Yeah, we talk about it. I think we've talked about it every episode so far. Maybe Sam's the first one. But I think even then we at least mentioned the fact that that meditation is very important and it's part of kind of self-centering.
Yeah.
So we thought we also came to the realization that we meditate differently. We use different methods.
Yes, which I think probably a lot of people do, right? I think everyone who meditates has discovered meditation in many different ways and forms and practices. So I really want to get to those people who think that they can't meditate.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that I'm honing in on because.
And I'm thinking specifically of those of us who think when they're in like a bit of a rough headspace and they think, I'm not in a headspace to meditate.
That's when you need to do it.
That's really when you need to.
Coming from a place that we have both been guilty of doing exactly that, and not you hide from it for sure. But that's the whole point. The more you practice, one, it becomes more comfortable because it becomes more known. Two, you know you've had then enough experiences where it has made you feel much better, or you've had some maybe really cool experiences. So it makes it easier to make those decisions as well. And I can't remember what my third point was, so I'm going to end with that one.
Those are 2 very good points, and I'm sure we'll come around to the third one eventually.
Yeah, I'll probably shout it out at some point when it comes to my brain.
Mid-meditation. No. So I guess we'll start with our personal meditation styles. And a bit of a personal history. Emma, why don't you kick us off with where your meditation started? Where your meditation journey started?
Oh, I love this one. I love this story. So I think when I first ever tried to meditate, I can't remember when it specifically was, but yeah, like I did just fall asleep. And I fell asleep quite a few times. So I just thought, I'm doing it wrong, you know. And one day I was listening to a podcast which had nothing to do with meditation. It was a vegan podcast. But I think he was interviewing a guru. And the interviewer, Simon Hill, asked this guru, if people fall asleep when they meditate, does that mean that they're doing it wrong? And this guy said, if you fall asleep when you meditate, that is exhaustion leaving your body. And it's because that's what you need most. So no, you're not doing it wrong. It's part of the process. And that was enough to make me think, oh, okay, you know, maybe I'll give it another go. And it was probably 3 or 4 times before I managed to like stay awake during the meditation. And I had this really cool experience. So I was laid down on my bed. I pretty much always meditate lying down on my bed, which almost everyone will tell you not to do. But tried and tested works for me. So don't let people tell you how you have to meditate is point number 1.
100%.
Yeah. So I was lying down on my bed with my eyes closed, and I just felt myself drop down into this state that I'd never experienced before.
Oh, you've told me about this actually.
Yeah, I actually made a YouTube video about this a couple of years ago, I think. But so I don't know how it was almost like, you know, when you're falling asleep and you're kind of half awake and half asleep, and your body, you start to feel less connected to your body, but you're still aware that it's there. That was how it felt. But there was this moment of like drop, and I now that's how I know that I've just gotten into the zone now. But this was my first ever time, and I guess you could say, the visuals that were coming into my mind were everything was completely black, and I was a light, like a ball of white light, and I could see other balls of white light, and I was just moving and passing through, and that probably lasted for like a minute or 2, because then I was like, oh, this is really cool, and it just pulled me out of the meditation. So that was my first ever proper experience of having some kind of like mystical experience, but also just so happens was my first ever meditative experience. And weirdly enough, like I didn't really do it again for ages. I don't even know how long, maybe a year. And the reason I started exploring meditation again was because I would, again, when you're in that kind of half awake, half asleep phase, I kept having this experience, and this went on for like well over a year, maybe even 2 years, where my hands would feel, how I described it at the time was numb, but not in the way that, you know, when you've slept on your arm and it goes all tingly and numb. It was just like I couldn't feel my physical hands, but I could feel like the energy of my hands, as if they were like floating. And at this point, you know, I'd finished my PT qualifications, I was studying remedial massage, so I was coming at it from a really scientific angle of, what nerve am I lying on to create this? Yeah. But it was always in both hands. So if I woke up and I was lying on my left side and I had this feeling, I shouldn't feel that in my right hand. Yeah. Right. And again, there was no tingling, there was no nerve pain. I could be lying on my back and I would feel it. And so this really started to confuse me. And I eventually ended up going, this was completely unrelated to meditation, but I ended up going to a craniosacral therapy course, right, level 1. And there was a lot of meditation involved in that. And I did there, this is why I think I love body scan meditation so much, because he put on a recording of a guided body scan meditation, and being able to connect with my body in that way. And like I have this thing with my left side kind of sacral, like lower back area, and particularly at that time it was clicking and popping a lot. Like it would feel kind of restricted, and then I'd maybe move or twist in a certain way and it would pop and I'd feel relief. Now we were doing this guided meditation, and I was laying on the floor just on my back, and at one point like I just got that pop and like my back just released, and I was lying there doing nothing. All right, so that was a really pivotal moment, because that was the first time I was like, whoa, like just by coming into my body and like paying attention to it and being open to feeling what's going on in my body, shifts can start to happen, even though I'm not physically manipulating anything, I'm not physically moving anything. And I'd also asked about my hand thing, right? Because I thought maybe these people will know.
Definitely.
And they couldn't give me an answer either. But they did say like, maybe because you work with your hands, there's a build-up of energy there or whatever. But one thing that he said, the guy who was running the course, was try and feel that through your entire body. And I was kind of like, oh, okay, again, probably like another couple, like maybe even almost 2 years before I started like trying to meditate again.
Yeah.
And this was the really pivotal moment for me. I started reading a book by Joe Dispenza called Becoming Supernatural. And
I remember when you started reading that book.
Oh my God, I freaking love this book. Go and read this book, people. It's life-changing.
We'll link it in the comments.
Yes, I will link it in the comments. And I was having such an amazing time reading this book, and the way that he was describing how to manifest and how to meditate, and how people were curing themselves of all of these ailments. And I was like, this sounds really great, but, really? Like miracles? I don't know. This is getting a little bit too woo-woo for me. And I just so happened at the time to kind of get Audible. And, I had some free credits because they'd done a promo thing. And I was like, I wonder if there's any Joe Dispenza stuff on here. And I managed to find one of his recordings. So basically it wasn't an audio book, but it was live recordings from one of his events. So some chapters he's talking and he's explaining and all of that, and on other chapters he did some guided meditation. And it was through the meditation, listening to Joe Dispenza's meditation and his explanations as well, and then that thought popping into my head of like, that feeling that I have in my hands, like trying to make it spread. And the first time I tried, I managed to make it spread all the way up to my shoulders. And what it felt like was, if my hands were like here, I could feel them, I could physically feel that they were still there, but I also felt like they were here, floating above my hands. And so I started to practice this more and more. And then I could feel it, in my feet and my legs and eventually my entire body. And then I had my first, I love thinking about this because it was just so amazing. I had my first experience of of really expanding my consciousness. Where, so what I know now is that going through this process is your energy body expanding outside of your physical body. And that has to happen before your consciousness can expand from your brain to outside of you. And when I had that first experience, it was like going through it, I felt like I was tilting on my side like this, even though I was actually lay on this very massage table. Yes, it's a special table.
I was just thinking, ooh, maybe I should meditate in here.
Yeah, that's what we're sat on, guys. We're sat on my massage table when we record these episodes. So I was lay on this very massage table, and I knew that I was lay completely flat, but I felt like I had tilted like this. And do you know how hard it is not to move when you feel like you're tipped on your frickin' side?
Yeah. It's like that jerk reaction when you're dreaming of falling.
Yes.
It like jerks you awake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which, oh God, I can't wait to talk about that in our dreams episode, because I've got a new whole theory about that. So I'm feeling like I'm tipping on my side, and I'm like, you know, stay with it, stay with it, stay with it. And I did. And I felt like I was simultaneously completely outside of my body, but I could still feel it. I was still aware of it. So I guess like I was attached to it, because you can't, you know, until you die, like your consciousness is attached to your physical body regardless of where you go. But yeah, it was like I wasn't inside of me anymore. And something that Joe Dispenza talks about is becoming nobody, nowhere, no thing, no time. And you're going into this quantum field of like infinite possibilities.
Yeah.
And that was just like, after having this experience, it was so strong that it became the catalyst for this insane like spiritual awakening that I had. And then I was meditating all the time. I stopped doing Joe Dispenza's like guided stuff, and I just started exploring, and I just started playing with meditation. And at that time, you know, I was very lucky to have only like two friends in my life that were very spiritual and that I could talk about my experiences with, because I used to be I come from a background of being very logical, very methodical. I did not believe in spirituality. I didn't believe in religion. I was just, you know, like, we're born, we live, we die, and that's kind of it. No wonder I was depressed. And the experiences I was having that were undeniable.
Yeah.
But initially, I did not feel like I could talk about what I was going through with most people, out of fear of being judged, out of fear that they would think I was crazy, that something was wrong with me. But, you know, quietly I started doing more research and just meditating a lot. Like, I almost kind of got addicted to it. Like, I just couldn't wait to get home and meditate. And, you know, because of my flexible schedule, I had gaps in my day where I had the freedom to do it. And I went from maybe being able to do like 10 minutes to I could meditate for hours. Like, it got to a point where at night when I was sleeping, I didn't feel like I was sleeping. I felt like I was meditating for the entire night, and I was having these experiences through that entire 8-hour period. So
how did that affect your restfulness?
I woke up feeling so rested. That was the weird thing.
Yeah.
Because what I can compare it to is, you know, when you feel like you're half awake, half asleep, which when I used to have a lot of trouble with sleeping, I'd be in those states a lot, and I would not feel rested in the slightest. But no, I would feel as if... But I could be exhausted during the day and do a 2-minute meditation and get that like bump of energy. So I truly believe that during those periods where it felt like I was in meditation the entire night, I was gaining a lot from it energetically. So yeah, you know, I wasn't tired. I was waking up feeling probably more refreshed than ever, and I was waking up at like that the crack of dawn, you know, and just enjoying those morning like I was still staying in bed. I wasn't necessarily getting up and doing things, but just being in this meditative state, like it was just amazing. And I don't, just for full disclosure, like that's not what I'm currently doing or experiencing. Like my meditation journey has evolved and will continue to evolve into so many different avenues. So I think the most important thing to remember is that no two meditations will be the same. And when you try and chase, I think about all the cool experiences that I've had and how amazing it would be to experience them again, but that's not the point. Like you're meant to have that experience to gain what you need from it, and then you're meant to have another experience and gain from that. So do your best, especially when you know, if you do start to experience some really cool and fun stuff, to not look for that next time. You know, be as open as you can possibly bring yourself to be to whatever comes in, because it's always new, it's always different, it's amazing.
I remember when you kind of started opening up to me about that as well. It had been after a period of time where we hadn't really spoken, and
yeah, that was weird.
It was a weird time. We like didn't speak to each other much. I mean, we both have whatever was going on in our lives going on, but we'd gone from like chatting pretty regularly through COVID, and then kind of following on from COVID for the next year or two, where we at least hung out once a month.
Probably more than that. Even, like, because
I think even in our slumps though, at least once a month, and often for a long time fortnightly as the basis and the bare minimum. And we were doing like massage swaps and all of that. To kind of have opportunities to just chat. And then there was this period of time, it was like
we just drifted. We just both stopped kind of contacting each other. And I think I was going through this big spiritual awakening. I know you were going through something at the time as well.
I remember we went on like a coastal walk together, and I remember kind of having that moment when we started, and it was kind of awkward because we hadn't really seen each other in a little while. We were kind of like, what do we talk about? And I don't remember who broached first, but I do remember kind of deciding, look, let's be authentic, let's be vulnerable, and opened up about this feeling. I think this was at the time when I was feeling like I was at my least authentic, and I was feeling quite a bit of, I don't want to say depression, because like I've mentioned before, like I'm not clinically diagnosed with anything, but I was having a bit of like a deep moment of like depressive symptoms, and was not coping well, and I felt like I didn't know how to be myself. I didn't know how to be authentic, and I was just kind of quite out of it, and quite uncertain of who I was or where I was going. And you were like on the opposite end of the spectrum, and you were just like, thank you for being honest with me, in kind of the vein of honesty. I feel more like myself than I've ever felt. And it was very inspiring, actually, for you to have been like, honestly, I've been quite scared to be vulnerable and authentic with people in my life about all of this, because I don't know how people will react. And to hear you kind of saying that, and to have that realization of like, yeah, I'm not really being honest with the people in my life either. Like, I'm hiding my Christianity from my work colleagues, and kind of like lessening that around Nick's family and not being super honest about it. And I'm also like, obviously, kind of have these very deeply personal spiritual practices that I do kind of keep separate from my Christianity, because it feels like it doesn't really belong within organized religion, which is something that I'm still grappling with, but that I'm trying to kind of come to terms with
Yeah.
a lot more, and that I'm being much more honest about kind of throughout my day-to-day. But yeah, it was a huge pivotal moment for me, I think, in my authentic journey. So
yeah,
thanks for being so honest with me on that walk.
Yeah, that was because I remember we'd sat down on the rocks,
yeah,
and we were having this conversation, and I think this was actually this was the first time you spoke to me anyway, more deeply about wanting to stop drinking.
Yeah,
I remember that being the first time that you really broached that subject with like, you know, I think I need to stop, and you know, you were talking about, I guess, the habit that you'd gotten into of kind of coming home and opening a bottle of wine, and I remember us having that chat on the rocks, and yeah, I told you about some of my stuff and you told me about some of your stuff, and the thing I loved the most though about that day was like I drove us home and we stopped outside your apartment, and we actually talked about the fact that we hadn't caught up for ages, and I was like, you know, I don't know why, but I just felt this need to like distance myself from you, and you know, and it was so hard for me to say this at the time because I thought it sounded horrible, but like I wanted to be honest with you and know that, you know, I still wanted to be your friend and I still wanted to hang out with you, but like because of what I'd been going through, and I felt that you had this like chaotic energy at the time that I needed to like distance myself from. And when I told you that, and you were like, that's, you know, totally valid, and I've also felt like I needed to distance from you because you were going through something that I had like no idea how to understand or deal with, and that for me was such a pivotal moment in our friendship, that we could be so honest with each other and still love each other and still
support each other.
Yeah, but just firstly acknowledging what had happened, that we just, I don't want to say ditched each other for months because it wasn't a ditching, but we had just weirdly simultaneously distanced ourselves from each other.
It was like a general unacknowledged acknowledgement of like us needing to take space to work on ourselves in order to be able to show up for each other when we needed each other.
Yeah.
Which was something that I like have only ever really deeply experienced with my husband and my best friend, V. And I think that shout out to V for being the person that I have practiced all of my communication skills with. They're the reason that I have gotten as good at communicating as I am. They're the reason that me and Nick's relationship is as solid as it is in some ways. Obviously, Nick and I put so much hard work into our relationship.
Yeah.
But, like, a lot of the foundations of that was communication, trial and error that V and I went through.
Yeah.
And I think that's the same with that conversation. I had years of practice of, like, not reacting angrily that somebody had said that my chaotic energy is chaotic because I already know. Yeah. I'm just the agent of chaos.
Yeah, I was honestly so grateful for that because I think it's so important with deep, meaningful friendships to be able to, and knowing that, like, you know, that I didn't mean that in any kind of offensive way or in a way that, like, I don't want to be around you, but I was just being able to be honest about the fact that, like, I naturally felt this need to distance myself from you for a little while. And like, it was amazing because I don't think I have ever had that level of communication and honesty with a friend before.
It's very rare to come across.
Yeah, and like, look at us now. Besties.
We're living our authentic lives.
Yeah.
We're getting there.
No, well, yeah, I mean, I think after that, like, our friendship did kind of reach a new level.
Yeah,
and,
definitely.
We've obviously now evolved into being best friends who podcast together. So that's awesome.
It's a whole new level of friendship.
Yeah.
Hopefully we survive. I'm kidding. Wow. I'm kidding. I'm joking.
You have a puppy now. I'm not going anywhere. Okay, so yeah, that's a big chunk of my background story. There's way more to tell, but for now, let's get on to your background. How did you get into meditation?
Yeah. Well, I vividly remember the first time I meditated, which was when I was, I don't know, year like 6 or 7, with a friend who was into it at the time. And we'd like set up candles all around the room, and she was kind of guiding it, and she's like, okay, and now we just sit here.
Wow.
And
Was
think.
she...
And I was like, what?
Did her parents teach her how to meditate?
I don't know, actually. We never really spoke about where this came from or where this kind of drive came from for meditation. Wow. But she was like leaps and bounds beyond kind of anything that I was experiencing at that time. I was still...
Well, yeah, 7 years old is...
Year 7, not 7 years old.
Oh, well,
sorry.
It's still young. That's
yeah,
like...
that's 11 or 12, maybe? Yeah. But so we were still quite young. But we like put candles up all around her room, and she lay down on her bed for her meditation, and I sat on the floor and did like the normal like kind of meditation style that you see, like the stock standard.
You see Buddha doing, you know.
Yeah, like really leaning into this thing that I had no idea what I was supposed to do for, because my only direction was now sit and be quiet and clear your mind, and I did the opposite. For the entire, like, I sat quietly, but instead of clearing my mind, I kind of just stopped controlling my mind and stopped, like, trying to wrangle my thoughts, and kind of, essentially, like, the way that I describe it now is that I kind of let the chaos win. I really just kind of let my mind be a chaotic mess where I didn't really focus on any one thought, and just kind of let it exist in its natural habitat. And... We stayed like that, I want to say, for like 30 or 45 minutes. Like, it was a long time, and felt even longer because I was a kid and I had no idea what I was doing. Yeah. And when we chatted afterwards, she was like, oh, well, you did that wrong. And I was like, oh, okay. I guess I'm not cut out for meditation. And so I didn't meditate again until I was at uni. And I went to uni originally for English, but halfway through I changed over to religious studies because I had this drive for answers. Was going through a big spiritual kind of awakening and reconnection to a practice that I felt I didn't have a very healthy relationship with religion and spirituality. And so during one of my courses, our professor said that a Buddhist monk was coming to teach us about meditation.
Wow, that's so cool.
And anybody was welcome, and those of us in the course had to go. And I was like, shit, the thing that I'm not good at. And am I gonna be tested on it? Am I gonna have how's this gonna affect my grade if I can't sit still? And one of the first things that he said was that nobody's good at meditation, and that it's a meditation practice. Yeah. And that you don't succeed at it. You keep practicing it. And I thought, okay, maybe I was a little bit harsh on myself. Maybe I can do this. And the way that he kind of reframed it was that it's an opportunity for your mind to settle and to be quiet. Like, yes, your thoughts are going to run rampant. That's what your mind does. And not focusing on any of those thoughts is a really good starting point. Yeah. And it just doesn't really end there. It can't just be where you exist. You have to also kind of guide some of those thoughts and kind of quiet them and settle the mind. And I remember the mental state. So instead of closing my eyes, and I did this the first time that I meditated as well, I just stared into like middle distance. Yeah. And kind of gave like the unfocused gaze. And I generally still meditate that way. But the experience that I had this time of kind of following his recommendations of kind of, if a thought comes, acknowledge it and let it go. Yeah. And don't kind of let anything guide you. Yeah. And instead guide it. And I remember halfway through realizing that I was doing it, and I was doing it quite decent, like not perfect. I definitely had a lot of thoughts, and obviously the aim isn't to be complete. I mean, for some people, the aim is to be completely blank-minded and have that like surface of no movement, no ripples. But in terms of kind of my goals for the meditation, it wasn't that. It was just to have a little bit of the control over the chaos. And so I realized halfway through that I was doing it. And then I was like really thinking about that. And then I was like, oh, wait, hold on. Refocus. And so I refocused and kind of had the rest of the meditation. And that was like a 30-minute meditation. Yeah. For my first meditation, kind of guided, and my first actual meditation to be 30 minutes long and to feel like I did pretty well, except for like a bit of a hiccup halfway through. Yeah. Was really quite a big experience for me. And then similarly to you, I didn't really do it much following that. The reason being that I shifted after, and my entire body was in pain because I'd been sitting in a terrible posture. I hadn't been kind of paying any attention to my body, and my body was already wrecked anyway. I wasn't not taking care of myself in college, and so I kind of was like, that's great. Never sitting on a floor again for that. Yeah. I've got to change something. And everybody, of course, tells you, make sure that you're seated on the ground, have connection with the earth, make sure you're kind of seated in an upright position. Don't have anything with too much support because then you'll rely on the support. Or like there's so many different opinions on how posturally you should be for meditation. Yeah. Depending on the type of meditation as well. And that's something that now I kind of know. But at the time, so I was kind of going about without really doing much in terms of meditation. And then lockdown happened, the first COVID lockdown. And I thought, this is an opportunity to revamp all of the areas of my life that are not serving me and that I'm not doing well with. And so I kind of, within a week of the lockdown, the first COVID lockdown in Sydney, was it 3 months long? Am I over-exaggerating that?
No, I think that's about right.
It was very long.
But it wasn't...
It wasn't a total lockdown.
It wasn't a total... Like, we could still go out. From memory, I don't think we had, like, a distance restriction at the time. Yeah. So you could still go outdoors, but, you know, they'd closed things like gyms and coffee shops and, you know, so
anything
basically...
non-essential was closed.
Yeah, and you just had to be outdoors, but there was... And social distancing, but it was there
were weird levels to it, and there were different kind of phases. But in the first phase, when it was like no non-essential businesses, I wasn't working because I was a massage therapist. And so I had a huge chunk of time where I wasn't working. But for the first week, I just spent it revamping everything that I was doing to set up like my ideal life, right? And so I scheduled in meditation, and then I thought, I don't actually know how to do this. Like, I don't know really. I've got the one experience when I was a kid when I was told that I was doing it wrong. And then I've got a Buddhist monk who I had one session from, and I never had that opportunity really again. And so I started looking for guided meditations, and I started doing guided meditations. And I similarly also found body scan meditation, which was hugely impactful for me. And I think really helped that area of like, my body's uncomfortable while I'm meditating. Yes. And helped with reframing kind of all of that. So now all of my meditations start with a body scan so that I'm setting myself up. And I'll have like body scans throughout if I'm doing a longer meditation to make sure that I'm not slumping too much or that my back isn't kind of getting aggravated. Yeah. And that in itself has been a huge, huge help. But yeah, I think beyond that, I've also taken it a bit of a step further where my meditation is now part of my prayer ritual and my connection to God, in that I use it as the opportunity to stop asking for things and stop kind of thinking about all of the things that I want to thank God for, all of the things that I have going on in my life that I want to kind of leave to God to help me with, or to kind of take out of my hands in a way, and to kind of recognize and reckon with the fact that it's not my responsibility, or that this is bigger than I am. Kind of worries, concerns, fears, all of that. And instead of having all of that noise, having that inner monologue, just being with God and showing up to commune with God and to exist with God and to have that connection. Because in some religions, there's the fixation and the drive for people to have a relationship with God. And a lot of people, myself included, can feel like that's very one-sided, where we're like
worshipping,
or chatting to God and like not really hearing anything, and not really taking time to settle and be quiet and like listen for God to speak back. So it can very often feel like it's one-sided, like you're talking to the sky, and nothing's up there listening. Whereas if you take the time to listen, you might hear more of a response. You might feel that comfort. And people, I think it's similar to your experiences with expanding your consciousness and expanding your kind of cerebral energy self. I think that this is the way that I commune with my God.
Yeah, it's so interesting to hear you explain in that depth how you, that concept and feeling that you have. Because I guess I can similarly relate to, certain times that I meditate. For example, particularly if I'm feeling alone, and I don't mean alone as if like, I mean alone on a really deep level of like being a soul that chose to incarnate in this time and feeling that this world can be really difficult to live in, and having this like knowing, this like remembrance of being in a place of just complete love and unity where I didn't have to deal with any of this. So it's those times where like even having a partner and friends and all of that didn't feel like enough, and it was like I needed to reconnect with the true essence of source, and like be with source, and just like bask in that, and like remember that like I'm never alone, like it's always part of me, I'm always part of it. And that sounds quite similar to what you are talking about with communing with God. It's like being in that godly presence and remembering that is who you are. Yeah,
exactly. It's not about everything that's going on earth. It's about that soul connection. Within Christianity, you accept the Holy Spirit into you. You have the Holy Spirit in you. You have a piece of God in you. And that's the piece of God that can connect you to the rest of God. Connects us to everybody else who has God in them.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful. Yeah. And this is what I love when I get to hear these similarities between, spirituality and religion. Because I do think so much of religion is bound in spirituality, and vice versa in a way, like it is about connecting so deeply with yourself, with your God, with the rest of the living souls around you. And when you can take the time out of your day to practice that and to be there and show up and experience that level of pure love. On a spiritual level, it's of course incredibly fulfilling. On a scientific level, that flood that your body gets of this beautiful rush of like oxytocin and all the serotonin and like all those good hormones that healthy, happy, functioning people have an abundance of. Well, not an abundance. we'll have bad days. We have. But I mean, technically, like, we do have an abundance of it. We can access an abundance of it. And I think, oh yes, that's the point. That's the point of meditating. It's like accessing your abundance, like filling yourself up when, well, not just when you're empty, but like always, like we can always tap into this and gain, and I don't say gain in a selfish way, but like gaining is in like you can learn from it, you can grow from it, you can expand from it, and you can then take that and gift your little part of it to the world.
Yeah.
And if we were all doing that, I just feel like the world would be
so much better.
So much better.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
And I understand that there are people out there in war-torn countries and you might say, well, meditation is not going to help them, and maybe that's true, but it's going to help to build a future that doesn't look like that.
Yeah. And I know that there's currently like a lot of strife in the world that is derived from religious supremacies and ideas of religious goals. And I think that part of that comes from a place of lacking a deeper sense of spirituality. I can't speak to the whole of all of the issues in the world and like the minutiae of it all, but I think that at some level there's a disconnect between individuals and their God, their higher power.
Yes.
The driving force. I think we as humans are so wrapped up in the earthly that we forget the spiritual.
Absolutely. Yeah, like I couldn't have said that better. Like that is a wonderful explanation, because that's the plague. It's the plague of the modern day, is that we are so wrapped up in the physical world and feeling that, like we have lost our power to whatever government or whatever, evil people we think are running the world, which, may be true, may not be true. Like, I do love a good conspiracy theory, but I think it's important to keep your mind open to stuff like that, but also not to go down those rabbit holes, because, maybe if it's in your path, if it's in your soul's plan to be that person that actually tears that down, great. But for most of us, like that's not the case. But I think what a lot of people don't realize is, but by doing these practices, by becoming your most authentic self, by connecting to your higher consciousness, connecting with your God, stripping away all the things that aren't serving you, that you see aren't serving anyone, and doing that work, it creates this knock-on effect. I mean, we're seeing that now, right? Like, look, this is why I say, like, I have faith in humanity, because as much terribleness there is out there, like, we're seeing people become more evolved, and it's just so interesting that they all seem to be intentionally or unintentionally following these spiritual concepts of just being grateful for what they have, and like being generous with their time, being kind to others, wanting to communicate better with their children, and
showing up in a very conscious way, and like
it's like being a human in its better forms. and that comes along with like forgiving those who are, you know, displaying the undesirable forms of humanity, the greed, the lust, the choosing to suffer and the choosing to be violent and the choosing to, you know, tear other people down. But it is part of the awakening process, in my opinion. Like we go through these things in order to remember, you know, the true essence of what a human soul is, and that is love. It's unconditional love, and that's something that we've really freaking forgotten how to do. And I get it. You know, people have made it pretty hard to remember to love them unconditionally with rape and violence and terrorism and
warfare.
Yeah, and that's some of the worst stuff, right? There's also just people walking around being dickheads, like, you know,
just your average Joe,
just being rude to each other, or, you know,
the worst of humanity,
making their kid feel like crap because they're gay, you know, like there's so many levels to this stuff.
Yeah.
But when you have a naughty child that's like done something wrong, and you can say to that child, hey, like, you don't have to act this way, and I don't know what's making you think or behave this way. I want you to know that I love you anyway. And, you know, we're going to be over here in the meantime doing things this way. So come and join us whenever you're ready, you know. And I know that can sound totally oversimplistic and like a very happy ideal, but
it's so true. And it's actually something that's practiced and that you see. Like, I've seen videos of parents explaining that they've, like, removed their kid from a situation that's stressing them out or that's making them, like, causing them to throw a tantrum, something in that environment's triggering them. If you take them out of it and you give them the opportunity to work through it, their children are fully capable of working through.
Oh, so much more than we give them credit for.
And we are too. Full grown adults. We can work through it.
Yeah.
Whatever tantrum we're throwing.
Yeah. But I mean, like, you know, back in my day, we just got told to go to our rooms, you know, or you'd get a little smack on the butt. That was normal. That was what our parents had. Like, that was how they parented. That, you know, that was all they knew how to do. So, but that's played a role in, like, us growing up to being like, well, you know, when I think back, like, no, my parents didn't communicate with me great. When you asked why, you got told because I said so. Like, and that you just had to accept it. And I remember as a child being so frustrated by that answer. And witnessing parents actually, like, explain things to their kids now, and their kids then getting to absorb and think about that and have better decision-making skills and better, you know, social skills of being able to, like, interact with their parents, with other kids, with themselves, understand their emotions, you know, like, and I take that and I apply that to the whole world, is that if you just lead by example, and we have more and more people leading by example, and it doesn't mean that we get it perfect.
Yeah.
Because, but we, like, show that we're trying.
Yeah, because our parents, obviously, like, they did the best that they could.
Yeah, for sure.
Based
just like we'll do the best that we can, and, you know, our kids will grow up and look at all the ways that we could have done better, and they'll do better with their kids. Like, this is the whole point, is that in the grand scheme of evolution, if you don't just get bogged down on all the terrible things that are happening and all the things that are going wrong with the world, and you just focus on yourself and your family and, like, doing what you can to rid yourself of all the things that plague you, that make you unhappy and that make you, you know, unauthentic, like, not yourself, that you hide. And we do that and we pass it down through generations, and that is why I believe that, like, the future is brighter. I do have faith in humanity. I do think we're going to figure it out along the way, but as we all know, like, it's a rocky road to figuring stuff out. It's a rocky road to success. It's not a straight path. It's ups and downs, and it's pitfalls, and it's climbing up mountains, and you know, I think we'll get there.
You're giving me more hope for the future.
Thanks.
This is not how I thought my day was going to go. I did not think that I would leave this hopeful about future generations.
Good, okay. I changed one mind, I didn't. Maybe.
Well, we'll see. We'll see how I'm feeling tomorrow.
Yeah.
The chaos can still win.
Yeah. But we got sidetracked. We were talking about meditation.
We were. We tend to do this. But I think we got to a really good place in terms of our conversation about meditation. The fact that it's led us to deeper spiritual journeys.
Yeah.
And deeper understandings of ourselves.
Exactly.
And better coping skills for going about kind of our days.
Yeah.
We didn't really dive too much into that, but I think that, having a deeper connection with ourselves if we're not spiritual, and our kind of God if we are spiritual.
Yeah. And look, you know, I just want to preface this with like, you don't have to label yourself as spiritual. You don't have to label yourself as religious. Like,
yeah,
you don't have to be anything, right? It was something that I actively avoided, I think. I didn't want to be seen as the hippie, the tree hugger. Like, I used to actually get annoyed when people would say stuff like that about me, and this is before I even went through the spiritual awakening that I had. So I guess people could see it in me before I could even see it in myself, because I remember being like, what the fuck? Like, why would you say that about me? Like, I'm not a tree hugger, you know? Yeah.
I had the opposite reaction where I was like, yeah, I'll hug some trees. And as a kid, also getting called very similar things and kind of being like, what are you, some sort of hippie? And being like, I could be.
Maybe. Yeah. Yeah, that's so funny. Yeah, because I was totally...
Yeah.
And I don't know why.
And I really, distinctly remember kind of coming to the realization that you were much more spiritual than you wanted people to think. Or then maybe even than you kind of were aware that you were.
I honestly just don't think I was... I had no idea I had all of this stuff inside me. And the fact that I am now speaking online and talking about these concepts, and I have so much more to say, you know, stuff that I never thought I'd go there, you know, to like meeting my spirit guides and having experiences of past lives, and like there's many things that as I went, like I said, I had this big awakening, and a lot happened in a short period of time. So I went from, oh, cool, I had this experience, to within 6 months of being like believing in all of this stuff that I had experienced, and very much being confronted with like, I don't know if I can share this with people. I don't know if people are going to believe me, and like, does it matter if they believe me? And I got a very, very strong message come through to me that if I chose to hide this part of myself, that you know, I was never going to be happy in life. And I felt it so strongly that I had to get brave really quick, and I knew I just had to start sharing where I felt like I could.
And I've as an outsider really seen you kind of blossom since our first conversation. Like within a month of that conversation, we had another lovely day at the beach where you were just telling me all kinds of stuff about kind of your spiritual journey, and I was sharing my spiritual journey, and there was no animosity in it, which is not always the case when people from two different religious standpoints talk. And so I think that was it was honestly quite impactful for me, having not really shared at the time kind of much about my own journey with faith.
Yeah. And
only really talked to Christians about my journey with faith. To have the opportunity to talk to somebody who is so open about their own spiritual journey completely outside of the Christian faith was really, really eye-opening for me and really impactful and deepened my own faith quite a bit.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks for sharing.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for sharing. Thanks for being authentic with us.
Yeah. It's beautiful.
It really is.
Yeah. Well, I think we have so much more to talk about with meditation.
Oh.
And we've barely scratched the surface.
This could be like a 10-week series.
Yeah. I think we're just going to keep slotting these episodes in. Because, there's so much to cover, and we're already at an hour. So I think we'll cap it for today, but we will definitely be doing more of this.
And we'd actually love to hear your experiences as well with meditation. So if you have different styles of meditation that you use and you want us to talk about different styles, or if you have questions about meditation and you want us to answer some questions, or
experiences you've had, or maybe things that you've just heard other people say or talk about that you want to know a little bit more about, we will do our best to help and answer. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank you as always for joining us. So happy to have you here, and we will see you next week.
Bye-bye.